Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another exciting episode of Trigger Warning Radio. I am your host, the Kaiju Conservative. Conservative author Brad Thor announced Saturday night in a series of tweets that he was going to be challenging President Trump for the Republican Party's nomination in 2020, and he did so in a series of tweets. Now, the first tweet that Brad Thor let loose with Saturday night says, "If no conservative steps up, I will absolutely challenge Donald Trump in 2020. America deserves better leadership." And this tweet was accompanied by a picture of Brad Thor himself, his head down in contemplation, like he's going through some sort of a very deep moral dilemma. He's standing in what appears to be the Oval Office, and oh my God, and he's holding Thor's hammer behind him, because of course there's an obvious metaphor here, folks. If you've never seen a Marvel movie, if you've never read a comic book, Thor is the god of thunder who has a hammer that only someone who is worthy can hold. And Thor, of course, is the only one worthy to hold that hammer, to carry its tremendous weight. And of course, the obvious metaphor here is that the hammer that Brad Thor is holding is the presidency of the United States, and he's the only one who has the moral clarity, he's the only one who's worthy of holding such a burden, which just a little self-aggrandizing and arrogant of him, I think. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a third-rate internet podcaster. Now, the second tweet, not even 5 minutes later, he says, "In fact, let's make it official. I'm in." So Brad Thor is officially going to be running against Donald Trump. He hasn't filed his notice with the Federal Election Commission, of course, so it's not 100% official. We don't know if he's going to be fundraising or, if this is all just a publicity stunt to sell some new book that's coming out. My bet is on the latter, but anyway, let's dive into this a little bit. Now, I was reading this article on Breitbart, and I thought to myself, well, God, why is this guy so familiar? I know I've heard the name Brad Thor before. Where have I heard that name? So I did a little bit of digging, and Brad Thor, conservative author, he's written a lot of thrillers. So some of you out there in the audience may have read one of his books. I never have, just full disclosure there. But the other thing that I found interesting about Brad Thor was he was on the Glenn Beck program quite a bit. He's a regular contributor to Glenn Beck. And then it hit me. Remember back in oh God, what was it? Back in 2016. Back in 2016, during the presidential campaign, not even the official campaign. I think this was before the primary was even over. Brad Thor was on Glenn Beck's morning show on Sirius, and he made some comments that got him and Beck in a lot of trouble. And he essentially likened Trump to a South American dictator, and says essentially said that if he was to become president and he was going to be a tyrant, then we needed to remove him by illegal means. And this is what he said. Brad Thor, back in 2016, Glenn Beck's radio show. He said, "With the feckless, spineless Congress we have, who will stand in the way of Donald Trump overstepping his constitutional authority as president? If Congress won't remove him from office, what patriot will step up and do that if he oversteps his mandate as president, his constitutional granted authority? I should say, as president. If he oversteps that, how do we get him out of office?" And then he keeps going. He says, "And I don't think there's a legal means available. I think it will be a terrible, terrible position the American people will be in to get Trump out of office because you won't be able to do it through Congress." And then Glenn Beck responded, "I would agree with you on that, and I don't think you actually have the voices we've been talking about this off air for a while." So right then and there, Brad Thor, 2016, floated the possibility of somebody having to assassinate President Trump. Of course, Thor absolutely denied that he was talking about assassination, of course, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But the comments were controversial enough that Glenn Beck's radio show was suspended from Sirius for a week. So if right up until now you've been thinking, God, he's so familiar, that's why. Because this guy advocated removing Donald Trump through illegal means. What other illegal means could there be other than assassination? What could there possibly, what else could that possibly mean? I mean, so that right there, that's going to be very interesting, to see what happens in any campaign with that. All right. So let's assume that, that Brad Thor is serious about this run. Let's assume that this isn't just a publicity stunt. So the big question that you have to ask yourself, that everybody needs to ask, especially people need to ask this of Brad Thor, but what would Brad Thor do differently than Donald Trump? I mean, right now we have unemployment at the lowest it's been in, since the 70s. The economy is starting to come back from the Obama recovery, which wasn't really much of a recovery at all. And, black unemployment, Hispanic unemployment are at historic lows. And foreign policy, Trump's foreign policy wins just keep on coming. We recently had North Korea saying that they are suspending their nuclear program, and we have serious talk of a peace treaty on the Korean Peninsula. So what would Brad Thor do differently? I think that's definitely a very fair question, and one that he's going to have to actually answer. He's not going to be able to just skate by. People are going to see what Trump has done with the economy, with foreign policy, with everything, and they're going to want to know what's going to be different under a Thor presidency. Now, Brad's going to face a lot of challenges if this is a serious primary run, and I don't think it necessarily is. But a couple of challenges that he's going to face, number one, Donald Trump is the incumbent in 2020. Incumbents are traditionally very, very powerful. Taking out the example of Obama, who won his second term with the lowest margin of any president in history. Taking that out, incumbents generally don't face too many challenges inside their own party. Going back to Obama, he didn't face any challenges inside his own party at all. Bill Clinton was pretty much the same. Ronald Reagan, very much the same. Incumbents don't get seriously challenged in primaries. They generally just kind of skate on by. So Thor's going to have to deal with that. Trump's going to have a lot of leverage with the American people because they're going to be seeing all of the economic effects of Trump's presidency. I mentioned them before. Lowest unemployment in decades, historically low black and Hispanic unemployment. The foreign policy wins that I talked about as well. Those are going to be very large hurdles that Thor is going to have to overcome. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. I think he's going to stumble on those hurdles, quite frankly. Now, Trump may have a couple of faults in 2020 that may work against him. The wall has not been built yet, and that's a sore point for a lot of Trump's base. It's arguably one of the things that elected Trump. Now he's gotten very tough on the border. We've had increased deportations. Things have gotten better, but we still don't have that wall, which one can argue is the quintessential symbol of Donald Trump's campaign and his presidency. So if that doesn't get built by the time the primary season kicks off in earnest, I think that's going to hurt him a little bit. We also have Obamacare. Obamacare is not fully repealed. The individual mandate is ending next year, but the law is for the most part still intact. And there's not much sign of it being dismantled by the current Republican Congress, by the way. So if Obamacare is still around, that's going to be another strike against Trump. Now, are these going to be enough to beat him in 2020? I don't think so. I don't think this is going to be enough for anybody to beat him for the primary. General election is a different story. General election, there's a lot more twists and turns. There's a lot more nuances and things like that in a general election than there is in a primary season. Primary season, Donald Trump still got 85% of the Republican base out there. The Republican base, despite what the mainstream media has said, has not abandoned him by and large. His support among evangelicals has gone up about 5 or 6 points. So that right there puts him in a very strong position. Yeah, you're going to have a lack of a wall. Yeah, you're going to have Obamacare still intact, but I think those are going to be not overlooked by the base, but I think they're going to be outweighed by the positive effects of Donald Trump's presidency. People are going to see they're already seeing more money in their paychecks. They're getting bonuses from their companies because of Trump's tax reform bill, and their tax returns are going up as well. My tax return doubled from last year, and it's set to go up again next year as well. So that right there, considering politics, what's the old saying? It's the economy, stupid. I think the economic virtues of Trump's presidency are going to outweigh those negatives. Is Trump going to campaign on those in 2020 during a primary season? Well, we'll have to see. I don't know if I would campaign on that. If I do campaign on that, and I'm Trump, I'm definitely spinning it as, it's Congress's fault that we don't have these things. And it is by and large Congress's fault. And I think the American people realize that. That's why Trump's approval rating keeps going up. He's sitting at 51% with the latest Rasmussen poll right now. That right there is going to be another hurdle that Brad Thor is going to have to overcome. Plus, nobody knows who the hell he is. Yeah, you might, if you listen to Glenn Beck, you might know who he is. And Glenn Beck's audience is shrinking, by the way, day by day. And if you read some of his books, you might know who he is. But let's face it, people don't read a whole lot anymore. They don't have time. With the Obama economy, people are spending all their time working. So he's going to have an insane amount of hurdles to overcome to even come close to beating Trump at a primary in 2020. That brings me to, my last point. What are Thor's chances? What are Brad Thor's chances of Ragnaroking Donald Trump's world in the 2020 primary season? I will say slim to none. I think if we held the primary today, I think Donald Trump gets, I would say he probably gets maybe 65, 75% of the Republican vote. Brad Thor, I think maybe 10%, probably less than that, especially if another more well-known challenger throws his hat into the ring. What if Mitt Romney decides that he wants to run for president in 2020 against Donald Trump? That throws everything all out of whack, and Thor has absolutely no chance at that point, or even less of a chance than he had before. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. What do you think about Brad Thor's chances in the 2020 Republican primary? Do you think he's got a shot? Do you think he has absolutely no chance in hell? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, if you liked what you heard, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all next time.